February 6, 1907, page 190. Last night I had a terrible nightmare. Mary had escaped from quarantine and was fleeing through the city streets, smearing disease over crowds, people falling ill in her wake as if in a plague. Somehow I spotted her and followed her to Mr. Soper's home, a place of brilliant light. He slept peacefully in a gauzy bed. Mary stood over him with that wild, trapped look in her eyes, and suddenly he awoke, and seeing Mary sat straight up in fright, she wailed, "Why are you tormenting me?" in a most wrenching voice. Then she opened her mouth horribly wide, and I could see the round typhoid germs bubbling up from inside of her. She saw me and screamed, "You!" I ran down the bright hall at the sound of Mary's feet pounding after me, and I feared Mr. Soper, whom I had left behind. I knew he had succumbed to the fever, and I was crying and calling his name and running, turning corners, barely dodging Mary each time. The bends and steps of the house were endless, and I ran until I couldn't breathe and then collapsed on the floor, sobbing with the little breath that I had. Mary came behind me, pleading, "Help me, girl! Don't lock me up! Don't put me away! I beg of you, please! Help me!" I tried to get up, but she kept pushing me down and begging without end. I woke to find myself on the floor, my back pressed into the cold stove. Dread sank into my bones, and I felt sick. The image of her filled with typhoid germs has not left me all day. Feelings of death and helplessness, fears too deep for me to name, swell inside of me. The sense of loss bleeds through me. And what happened with Mr. Soper today makes my ache more real. This afternoon, Mr. Soper received a mysterious telephone call, and I was working at my desk, transcribing his study of Mary's case, only half listening to his replies. Expecting the report from Dr. Parks, I noticed a stiffening of my chief's body and lowering of his voice. I glanced furtively at him. Furtively is one of your vocabulary words. Go see what you thought it was, see what it is here, and look it up. So I glanced furtively at him, wondering if it was the Boeing family, still so upset about our trespass. Usually Mr. Soper deals with them in a calm, short manner, but this time color flushed his cheeks. He asked the speaker to wait a moment, and he held the hand over the horn. "Prudence," he said, "will you please fetch me a sheaf of paper from the supply closet?" "I have some here," I said, and I reached into my desk. "And ink. Please go empty the supply closet right now and get me a bottle of black India ink," he said, indicating the door. "Please go." I rose from my desk, watching him. He wanted to take the call alone. He had never done that before. Was it a woman? The forbidden love I'd kept bottled so tightly rushed into my throat, and I left the room. Choking on jealousy, I closed the door quietly and stood just outside the glass, trying to hear what my chief was saying without seeming obvious to the fellows who passed me in the hall. I needed to find out who was on the telephone, and I heard a private manner, and not authorized to speak, and Mr. Briggs, things that were enough to tell me it was a business call. But the poison had been released in me. Love flooded my chest and ached in my stomach. I hurried down the hall to the supply closet, gulping back the fear that I had lost him. My hands shook as I unlocked the door, and I stood looking at the shelves for paper and pens and ink and blotter and white stars of light dancing before my eyes. I worked so hard to hide my love from him, to remember Anushka's 3 rules, but underneath everything I did, during every moment of the day, it was there. The power of it, now released, nearly overcame me, and I drank down air, trying to fit my feeling back into the small secret box where it belonged. But it wouldn't go. It was like walking to the center of a bridge and looking out over the long, wide river and trying to fit that vastness into the small box I had imagined it somehow before. Now, it just won't go.